This is the Fanatic About the Playoffs podcast. I'm Brian Seltzer, and on this episode, we preview round one, game one with 97.5, the Fanatics' Devon Givens and Anthony, the Cuz Gargano. Fellas, it's here, finally.
Finally's the word. Go D, you ready? We've been talking
You're
about
not kidding. Can't wait. Still can't wait. I'm so glad it's finally here.
Listen, Devon and I, we do this pretty regularly, but it is a true privilege to have the Cuz himself on. I don't know if we can get this. We're going to have to cue up the music to bring in the man who plays the song perhaps more than anyone in the entire city, the Cuz himself.
Well, I was an admirer of you two. You kidding me? I'm honored to be on with you guys because you guys appreciate the song.
Of course. And we can't get tired of hearing it. This year we heard it a lot. We heard a lot of the song.
Yeah, it's you know what's great about this whole thing is that last year, now obviously with COVID and everything that hit us, then you start the bubble, and then the way it just extinguished so quickly. Ben gets hurt, and then it's the Celtics, and it's over. And there was a really, I think, a sense of loss, as though, you know what, we had reached almost a dead end in the process. And then all of a sudden, Doc and Daryl, and then, Elton's there still. And all the guys were able to resuscitate it and actually grow it. And, we haven't been this close.
In some ways, it's strange to me because this almost feels like it's been a 15, almost 16-month season. Not it started in December. To me, this has felt like there's a connection going all the way back to when things ramped up again after the shutdown and the bubble, and it's been a continuation of that story. And I don't know how you guys feel about it. To me, sometimes you start a season and you feel good about a team, but it doesn't always seem like the promise is there immediately. Then there's other seasons, I think of 2003-4 with the Eagles when they got T.O. and then boom, off to the races. They're undefeated to start the season. I don't know if this year was quite in that category for the Sixers, but still, right off the bat, at least to me, there was evidence that you could feel good that this team had the potential to do something pretty special.
It definitely did. I mean, you look at the changes that were made, and you talk about equating it back to the other seasons. I even take it back to 18 playoffs to 19 playoffs, and certainly with what happened in the bubble and now sliding into this one because of how tough that Boston loss was in the first round. Even though they were young and they weren't necessarily expected to win, but the path, it looked like they were set up to beat Boston and meet LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers at that time and figure things out after that. Okay, they take this step, they lose, but they're ready. And then the next year, okay, no problem. Then you get to what happens with Toronto in the second round, and it still stings. I can't watch it because of how much it stings. And then everything in the bubble, Ben's injured, and the fact that you have to insert Shake Milton in there, there are questions already surrounding the team, and Embiid is ready, other players not necessarily stepping up. And then the changes are made this offseason. So it's still like a continuation for me, just because you have to, of course, have that sting that we felt Boston, Toronto, and even last playoffs after the hiatus in the bubble, just because you need to feel those things before you start to feel the great feeling about winning and being a champion. And I know the 50 wins, it was great when you first hit it. The second year, all right, that's expected. Year 3, I don't count it anymore. Just go out there and win those 50 because they're supposed to be in that category. And now here, coming into this one, the changes, the reshaping of the roster, adding the shooters around both Simmons and Embiid, and the elevation that we expected from Tobias Harris with Doc Rivers now in the fold, and Dwight Howard. We're all excited about getting him on a 1-year deal because you're like, oh, you got a legitimate guy to back up Joel Embiid now. And then the other little tweaks and everything just started to fall into place. So now everything culminating together, the 49-win season, earning that number 1 seed. And you earned it, regardless of what it was, you earned it. And now you step into it where this playoffs is just going to be, as you said, Selson, just looking at it, as it's just so exciting to have that feeling of these guys can actually do it.
Yeah, they can win. And I'm so with you on the path to a championship, especially in this league. It's a grown-ups league, right? We always talk about it. It even goes back to when Brett called Jimmy the adult in the room. And I still remember that. I could hear him saying that. But it's true. You got to bleed to know bliss. And the bleeding has to come. You don't win titles in this league when you're that young, when your core is that young, and you got to go through it. Like you brought it up. I mean, that Celtics series was excruciating because they could have won every one of those games. They were in every one of those games. And you go down, and we all know how Toronto ended, like you said, D. And then, it was so weird because the first night of last season was against Boston. And you guys remember that. They actually played a semblance of bully ball. And I read the whole thing wrong. I thought that they would be able to play like that and it would get them to where they need to go. And it was weird. It just, they never were like this. The cohesion never came. And then you look back on it, and this is where I think where Elton and Daryl come into play, the spacing element that Devon talked about. Josh Richardson, could never play with Tobias Harris, right? In the sense that you got two mid-range kind of guys, even though they both could go out, but he couldn't spread the floor, Josh, like the way Curry and Green could spread the floor. And forget about having the extra four, man, who got all those looks, and I love him, and he's a good man, and he's a pro, but he just was no fit. And I read it wrong. I thought you could bring him out, and he looked uncomfortable the whole year.
To me, where this all starts is what you guys just talked about, alluding to this notion of a fit. And it's interesting that Joel, after a game a few weeks ago, someone asked him about the way the season's gone and the way that he's played. And he said, I don't think people talk about the fit of this team, the personnel, enough. And I agree. And I think this goes back to the moves that were made by Daryl Morey right after he came on board. You trade for Seth Curry. You acquire Danny Green. I mean, these are guys that can maximize the space, the balance on the floor with the main guys that you have on this roster. And I think, yes, so much of the Sixers' success this year, of course, has to do with Joel Embiid playing at an otherworldly level and Ben Simmons clamping down on defense and Tobias taking his game to a new level. But I think so much of that has to go back to that the roster makes sense with your top guys. It just makes sense, and there's that fit.
Yeah, and you even go back to where you added Bellinelli and Ilyasova to J.J. Redick. So you looked at it and everything, okay, great, those are your shooters. But then you had the other parts of it that defensively where they were exposed a little bit. Or maybe you just simply weren't deep enough where you can kind of play that offensive-defensive shuffle that you coaches like to do in certain situations. And as you said, because they pivoted to another way, and I was on board. I said, okay, look, we knew that they needed shooters and the whole thing with Jimmy Butler and J.J. Redick leaving as well. But the fact that they pivoted, they had another idea, and I liked the idea of what it could possibly be while everyone else is doing this. And maybe, again, it turned out it wasn't the right thing to do, but I was fine with it because I also felt like that next step will be taken by Embiid and Simmons, where maybe they could offset a little bit of the other stuff that they would be missing with the outside shooting not being there. But, things just didn't work out that way. And once we got back to that and knowing that you did need that stretchability out there from the other guys, and you see how it has changed and helped reshape things the way it needed to be. And you see the monster season that Embiid is now having.
All right, but let's talk about this for 1 second, because I don't think we can underplay this enough. So, yeah, for whatever reason, they couldn't play with Horford. They couldn't play. The two bigs didn't work. I get it. But this Joel Embiid is not that Joel Embiid. They're the same guy, but this is immature. This is a guy that understands it. And we've all been there in our own lives, right? Like comes a point in time where you go, you know what? It's time to get serious. And he had the epiphany. And I mean, we saw it before our eyes, because we always knew that he could dominate. And he would have his moments. He didn't score against Toronto. Come on. But this is we see him now on an elite, stuff that nobody's doing, that we haven't seen ever, right? Like, I didn't see Wilt, but I never saw anything like this when it comes to dominance. I mean, this is a different Embiid.
No, it is. It certainly is. I mean, we talk about it so often, right, Seltz? That he's just a different guy, whether it's the fact that he became a father, the losses finally stinging the way that you want your star player to feel those losses the way that he has. And he has established himself in a place where we already thought he could get to, like you said, and he did it consistently, and he always talks about it. I just want to dominate. The audio that we always hear about him saying he always wants to dominate, and he has. And Seltz, we've gone over all those games of our favorite Embiid games. This year, there are a number of games that we just forget about, right? Last week, I left you a 50-win game, 50-point game, and he's done the 40s and all these other 40s and the 30s and the 18s. And he just dominant, and he's just doing it a different way. And you're right, because he's just a different guy. And whatever it is, as long as that different guy now who has been the same dude all year long takes that into this one, where they start this playoff series on Sunday in round one in the quarters and carry it through the semis, and we'll see where everything goes through from there.
I mean, is there anybody in the East that can guard him?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
He's the most dominant player on the floor. That's the big advantage that you have going in. That, look, all due respect to the big three in Brooklyn and all the stars, nobody is as dominant as Embiid, and because nobody can guard him.
So even looking at what the potential options were for this first round, of course, Washington, they have guys like Beal and Westbrook. You think Alex Len or Rui Hachimura is going to stop Joel Embiid? Do we think that, Miles Turner, that hasn't worked out?
Don't forget about Robin Lopez.
That's right. Exactly. So when I've been thinking about, well, who could the Sixers face? Who might they match up with? That's the first question, cuz who is going to stop this guy? And the way he's going right now, I give him a lot of credit. I mean, his mindset and his demeanor seems like it's been in a great place this year. It didn't seem like he was enjoying himself much at all last year, especially now that we see him kind of back to his hip thrusting and waving to the crowd, whether it's there or not their thing that he's been doing this year. But he also seemed, in speaking with some people, like he really took a calculated approach to how he went about preparing for this season. He's not the type of guy, and I'm not saying this is a right thing or a wrong thing. I'm just saying it's not a Joe thing. He's not going to post the late night workout videos or in the gym dripping, working up the lather. Like, that's not him. He's not going to post that on his social media.
I like that.
If you do or you don't. It's just that's Joe's way. But he's been like in the film room looking at all this tape. Drew Hanlon, who's his personal coach and works with him on the side, he sends him right after every game is over a set of clips with voiceover affirmations that Joe listens to get ready for the next game, that breaks down what happened the previous game, all that stuff. So I think it's like a combination of his mind being in the right spot, the cerebral part, and then to me, his jump shot's been incredible this year, and how that's been able to open things up, and just being able to attack more off the dribble, try and like take it to these and things like that to try and break down some of the extra coverage you might see.
How much is that? You're talking about his game maturing too, right? Like, the thing about him that's so fascinating is that he's supremely smart, right? Like, he's got that photographic memory. We always talk about. I would always call he's got the mind of an art forger, right? Like, he can look at a painting and he can replicate that painting, whether that is, a move on the floor or whatever it is, because he's got the touch that we've never seen a true big had that kind of touch before. I mean, look, I marvel. Like, he's what I imagined that if Wilt Chamberlain grows with the times, right? Like, the legend of who Wilt was, and I didn't see him, that he would become Embiid. Like, that would be the evolution of Wilt Chamberlain, being this incredible athlete who's really, really intelligent, who just knows the game inside and out and can do everything. There's nothing he can't do, which is scary.
Yeah, he still will unleash a Euro step, and I'm just like, he's not supposed to be able to do that because of his size. But you're right. And us just seeing him grow and turning into this player and right in front of our eyes and seeing all these things, it's just been a treat because I think we've all had some concern with certain things throughout the years. And this year, not so much. And now he's playing more minutes where he's able to play the way that he needs to and not worry about the minute restrictions or anything like that. He can just go out there and play basketball and seeing the floor. And we talk about the double teams all the time where he's now surveying things, catch, face up, see when the double team is coming, see where it's coming from, and locate where the ball now needs to go. And that's just the natural growth, the maturity on the floor. And then even the maturity that Suck you just talked about with the things that you heard about how he has approached this season. And the beauty of it is he approached the season that way, but he kept doing it. He didn't waver. He didn't get away from that. Whatever was working for him, he kept that going. And that's just the growth of that star player. And now we'll see what it does for him and the team once we get things started on Sunday.
What could we expect to change now that it's playoff basketball? You always hear it's a different world. Do we expect to see things change for the Sixers, them not be able to get certain looks or shots quite as easily? What do you expect to see change now that we're talking about starting the playoffs?
Well, I think part of it's matchups, right? Like, it is a truism that the game does slow down. Just naturally, you're going to defend every possession, right? So it's almost like in baseball where every pitch matters. Like hitters bear down. They're now every pitch. The same way, every possession now becomes defended. Listen, we all know during a normal 82-game season, and you're on back-to-backs or you're on the road, 5 games in 8 days, 9 days, whatever, you're not going to defend every possession. That's just not humanly possible. But in the playoffs, that's what I think when people talk about the game slowing down a little bit, it doesn't actually slow down and become a half-court game. It's just defended better. It's defended more acutely. And I think that's the thing. And that's going to be the biggest challenge with this offense and, kind of getting the spacing and the shooters have to shoot. I think George Hill's going to help a lot. I think you're going to see him a lot. And you're going to see the minutes, the starters play prolonged minutes. I think that's going to be a big thing with Doc's rotation. Will naturally shorten up. Maybe not in the first round or even the second round, but certainly in the third round and then hopefully in the finals.
I guess I'll follow up with the attention to detail has to be there. They have to be sharper, more precise with how you attack certain things. The angles, you have to play those angles properly. And the physicality, of course, is different in the postseason. And the beauty of it is when you look at least the starters that you know that they've all been in the playoffs, so they know the difference in it. Tobias Harris spoke about it earlier in the week where he started to break down certain things. And one of the things that he talked about was the physicality that changes once you get to the postseason. So what does that mean? Even though Shake Milton did it last year in the bubble, how is that going to be different for him? The same thing for Matisse Thybulle as well. If Maxey gets a few minutes while his speed is there, guess what? That angle might be cut off a little quicker when you because you're now on that scouting report for the playoffs and they know exactly how they want to attack you, especially when you're playing them more than one game where they have an opportunity to do so. So I think all of those things are going to be important. The matchups and that you just mentioned, certainly important. And then just protecting the basketball too when we talk about all of that, because possessions matter. You cannot turn it over at a high rate and expect you to win, especially if you're turning it over at a high rate. And then at the end of the night, we look at the box score and the field goal attempts are 86 to 99. You just gave up 13 more shot attempts, and possibly because you turned the ball over. So those things are key and crucial in the playoffs. And that physicality ramps up. The whistle may be swallowed. So you're going to have to take advantage and be able to absorb that as well.
Real quick, because I want to follow up. D, you brought up Tobias, and I love his story in so many different ways. First of all, he's one of those guys, and you and I, Devon, have talked about him before, in that he's almost lovable. I mean, the way I describe him, I root for him so much because I think he's just a beautiful guy, man. He is heartfelt and he's real, and I think he's caring, and I love him. And I think the spacing and Doc just gave him a new lease. I think he came to understanding with the weight of that contract, that you just can't slough off. That's a big deal. And I think the spacing helped him. And I think Doc helped him on the plane of 4 where he naturally belongs. And I have no qualms. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I know that that role on the floor for him, that he's going to get you 23, 25, 26. He'll do that every game. I have no doubt about that.
He, to me, was one of the most fun and enjoyable stories. I think revelation might be that was my word, that he was a little bit disrespectful to what his body of work was before this season, but there's no doubt he stepped it up a notch. I think obviously everyone will point to the Lakers home game when he knocked down the shot, final seconds to win it. But then going back to what you guys said, D, I think it was you, about how Joel didn't just show up for the first couple of weeks, make a statement, and then go away. He kept doing it. Tobias was, to me, a legit option in fourth quarters throughout the season. He won him a handful of games, played great in fourth quarters all season long. And I'm thinking back to that Knicks game at home when he trotted down the floor and he barked the "I'm an all-star" thing. Still worldly Tobias, gentle Tobias, but a little more Tobias. Like, I'm going to show you. And here it is.
Yeah. And for me with him, and I don't think I'm unfair in saying this because I know how he felt about it, where he was disappointed in himself in the bubble, how he performed against the Boston Celtics. So, and I was too, because I expected so much, definitely with Simmons being out of the entire playoffs after the surgery, that you wanted Tobias Harris to step up. He did not. Then he had the concussion. And he earned some points for me when he fell the way that he did and still came back and wanted to finish that game and show me something. But you're right. He came back and he had something about him that just seemed a little different. And I think one thing that you mentioned, Doc Seltz and Ant, is Doc telling him to stop thinking. Just go play. Why are you thinking? Catch the ball, go. And that's what you do. You have a very good first step. So when you take that long first stride with your 6'9" frame and you have that ability to shoot over top of your defender and even shoot the way that he does on the move off the glass and get a very good look at a layup, it's something that's to his advantage. And he did it, and he confidently kept doing it, and it didn't stop. And I feel like he wants to redeem himself from last season. The fact that, again, Seltz, the all-star snub, and he's an all-star, carry all of that into the playoffs. Embiid, if you don't win the MVP, carry that into the playoffs. Because while it may not be awarded until after the season, we'll know the buzz will be out there, right? The all-NBA teams, the buzz will be out there. Use all of that. And Tobias Harris has to continue to use those things, then use those things, okay? Because that's going to ultimately help the team overall. And he has been really good. He has been really, really good this season. I hope his knee is good and he's able to hold up. And I'm sure he's frustrated how things were last year. But, yeah, just go out there, catch, and go. Don't think. Just go left. They can't stop it. Just do it.
What about the other gentleman who might be in the running for an end-of-season award, whether he gets it or doesn't? The always provocative Benjamin.
2-5.
It's amazing, isn't it? You just mentioned his name, Ben, and doing what Devon and I do for a living, the phone lines just light up like one. It's amazing. Like, you could see them. As soon as you say Ben, you don't even get to Simmons, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 and they light up. And he is such perhaps the most polarizing athlete that's been here in a long time, man. You got to go back a ways. And it's odd because it goes back to the same conversation anytime we talk about Ben. And I do think that people are awakening to his incredible skills and his gifted nature, that he is such an amazing defender. He'll never cheat you on the defensive, especially not in the playoffs, man. He's going to give you everything he's got. He's regal, and he's a beautiful player to watch and can facilitate like no other and rebound, the whole thing. And, it's going to come back to, as long as he's not the reason the offense stalls, let's face it, this is a huge playoffs for Ben when it comes to the fan base, right or wrong.
It is. It is. And we always bring up the success that he's had in the first round against Brooklyn in 18, pardon me, Miami in 18, Brooklyn in 19, where he was tremendous on the floor. And then, some of the questions we may have of his performance in the second round. This is huge for Embiid. They are the cornerstones of this whole thing. And as we talk about being angry of how things played out last year and the domino effect from 18 to 19 to 20 and now where we are right now, number one seed, all eyes are going to be on him. And he can impact the game in a lot of different ways. And as long as he goes out there and you mentioned it, never cheats the game, and he doesn't, plays the minutes hard and takes the assignment that's given to him, there are going to be a lot of good conversations, I'm sure, throughout this postseason as long as this run goes about what 25 does. He's a tremendous player. I love the guy. He frustrates me. He's a polarizing guy. I mean, but he frustrates me because I know, I believe I know what he can do. I've seen it before, and I want more. I'm greedy.
Yes, I think you're right on, Devon. I think it's not out of dislike or anything else. I think the criticism you hear is more frustration, and I think it's more because I think everybody believes in the ability that he has. Like, I watch him attack the rim, and man, he can look so good. Like, he just does things at 7 feet, so fluid. He's a beautiful player, right? Like, you want to talk about, an art form. I mean, that's the movement, the art of movement is watching Ben Simmons. And, greedy's a great word, man. I just think everybody's, maybe a little impatient, but I do think it all clicks for him. I don't know if it's going to happen this spring or this summer, but I think it all clicks for him. I think he's too good, too talented.
And quickly, Seltz, just him missing last playoff, right? Seltz, just him missing last playoffs appearance and how much that might weigh on him as well, where he couldn't help the team and he wants to be there for them this season.
Force. Just let me see the force. Ben with the force early. I feel like that was something where after he came back off that little bit of the injury absence down the stretch of the season, first quarters, Ben time, force right off the bat, blitz him, get that battering ram going, do your thing on defense. I think that's what everyone comes back to, that when he is in his get downhill, push the pace, if he can do it. Obviously, playoffs are going to be a little bit different. I think that'll help. I think Doc's helped him. I do. I think that Doc is, with all these guys, goes back to what we were talking about with Tobias. Just be the best version of yourself right now. We're not going to ask you to do anything too crazy. Just try and maximize what you've got and you can bring to the table.
Plus, you wonder, it was Brett and Ben. I mean, the ties go back so long, right? They're so deep. They're so intertwined. And Ben comes at it, and he's so young when Brett has him. I mean, that alone is a tough dynamic.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, and some of the guys have actually spoken about this week, talking about Doc. It's freshness, something different, new set of eyes, different tone. And Doc's got a pedigree. He's been there. I think that in particular, Ben and Joe are on the right place in their respective timelines, different from the guys that Doc had in LA last year, because they're still younger, haven't tasted what some of those guys in LA tasted, where Doc's voice carries that much more. I just think it's been great. I think it's been a great fit all around. Who do you think we might be talking about as we get farther along? I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hopefully not jump the gun, that we are not perhaps thinking of quite enough yet. Who could be someone who emerges for the Sixers that maybe we haven't quite talked about as much as we obviously would the top three guys?
If we go with, can I go?
Baby.
Yeah. If we talk about defense wins championships, then I'm going to go back to the bench and with your rotation, if you feel like part of that first 8, and I know Rivers came on, the station yesterday with Mike Missinelli and said that he's not really worried about that. And I love to hear that, because so many guys have played so well, they might have earned some minutes. If we're going with defense, then I'm going to go with Matisse Thybulle and how important he might be with his perimeter defense. If Doc feels like, hey, he's so disruptive out there that I can extend his minutes from 15 to 20 and his defense is turning into offense, he's getting some fast break baskets, some baskets in transition. You reward him with an outlet pass, or even with him just getting a steal and going the other way and just taking it in for a dunk. But I just think with him, combined with Embiid, Simmons, and Green out there on the perimeter, and sometimes Hill as well. And not to say that no one's talking about it, but just to answer your question, Sells, I think Matisse Thybulle, when we talk about all eyes on people, I think so many people are going to see, all right, what does this guy, have for us as far as the playoffs go? Now that this is his second year, he already kind of knows how these guys play. The scouting report, he and Dan Burke going over things, and Matisse
That's your boy,
is just
Dan
Matisse.
Burke. You love some Dan Burke.
Hey man, first Dave Yeager is my guy.
I know.
That defense, he and Dave. So look, I think Matisse Thybulle. That's what I'm going. And you were pointing. You agree?
No,
with that?
I agree with you. I do, especially if the matchup is Brooklyn, because you will need him against Brooklyn. You'll need him to help defend those big three. I'm with you. I love the kid. I think the kid is such a great defender, willing player. So I'm with you. I also think George Hill and Danny Green. I think Danny Green we don't talk enough about because he's a guy that's been through playoff wars. He's going to get his fair share of looks. And there's going to be days, and we've seen them. I mean, Devon, you talked about it. When Danny goes off and he's feeling it, like that, he'll win you a game. And I think he's going to win them a big game. I could see him going, 7 for 9 from 3 in one of these pivotal games and winning it for him.
I thought he had an awesome season. He'll make the play for you defensively. He can be there and counted upon. And I just thought super efficient. After the All-Star break, he just went up another notch.
Yeah.
He was perfect. Perfect addition for this team.
You're gonna need those guys. This is a team thing. They always preach team. As much as we talk about an individual award for the most valuable player for Embiid, they always talk about team. And that's what they're gonna need in order to win. So if Embiid can win you 2 games, stars do that in the playoffs. Superstars do that. They'll win you games in series. We've seen it so many times. If he's going to do that, there's going to be that Danny Green that goes 7 for 9 from deep and Celtics. There's going to be Shake Milton where he goes for 6 of 12 one day, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wait a minute, Shake has 17 just like that in 15 minutes? Whoever it might be, it is going to have to be a team thing. And I think that they are set up perfectly. It kind of just circles all the way back to what we talked about, how this team was built, how this one was put together. And they all lean on one another. They trust each other, it looks like now. After seeing them for 72, it looks like they trust one another, and they have the right coach in there right now to lead the way to get them finally where we want to see them get to.
I feel comfortable that I've seen enough from some of these bench guys who might be called upon to know that if they needed to do something in the postseason, there might be an opportunity for them to win the Sixers a game or get them back into a game. I mean, I'm a byproduct of my environment. I listened to probably just about every word that Brett Brown said for the last 7 years, but he would always talk about that game, Spurs-Dallas, I believe it was. Steve Kerr, when was it? West Finals? Steve Kerr comes off the bench. I don't think he played a minute in the series. That was the stories. Goes out, bang, bang, bang. Just knocks down a bunch of threes, and the Spurs end up winning the game, winning the series. Who knows? Could be a Furk. Maybe Furk. Bring him in.
In the right matchup, right? You look at a team like Brooklyn, you're going to need Furk, and you're going to need your 3-point shooters, right? So you're going to need him to come out and
yep.
And against a team like Brooklyn that doesn't play great perimeter defense, he'll get good looks. And if you get him on the right night, he'll knock those looks down. So, now, I guess if it's a Milwaukee you're playing in the conference finals, they're not a great defensive team, but they're a little bit better. I think depending on matchups, it is like I could see Furkan against one team. I could see Shake against another, like that sort of thing. That's why, and Devon, you talked about earlier, man, that's what makes the playoffs so much fun because styles make fights.
Man, I tell you what, though. I tell you what, I don't know why, and he put it in my head. Somehow, some way, we're going to see Tyrese Maxey at least through the first two. I don't know about the conference finals, but those first two rounds, he just continues to do stuff, and he does stuff that when you look at the team, you say, no one else can really do what he just did right there. And it could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. He's going to do something. And I think that's where the depth of this team goes, where you can't play him 10, you can't play him 15. But if Doc Rivers sees a moment and he says, Tyrese, I just need you to run, attack the basket, get these guys in foul trouble, get the ball on the rim, the Dwight Howard, you clean it up if it comes off, he's going to do something. I see it.
It's a great point that you bring up because he's so fast. He could just change momentum. Like, he can give you a spark. Or like, you put him in a game and, in third quarter and like to me, the perfect time for him, beginning of the second quarter, end of the third quarter, where you need that one little lift to get me to the end of the quarter, and he'll give it to you. He might score 5 points in 3 minutes and dish out an assist and get a steal.
Yep. That's it.
He's been great. I agree with all of it. Different presence, bouncy, flashy, change it up.
He's going to be a hell of a player, man.
Yes,
at some point,
I agree with that.
He's going to be a great player.
We'll do it again. This was
the
first time, hopefully,
man.
of a long series of gatherings via microphone and Zoom to talk about 76ers playoff action.
I love it. I love it.
July. We're talking July.
And then we'll do it on the beach. We'll go to the boardwalk.
No question
like
about
plan,
it.
Man.
No question about it.
I love it.
All right. You, of course, can hear the Cuz every weekday, 10 until 2. And then Devon, weeknights at 6 on the home of the Sixers in the Delaware Valley, 97.5, the Fanatic. Fellas, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.